What's up, YouTube? It's your boy Grayman47. I'm back with another video. Hey, I was out at the range today just getting some practice in, so I decided to do a quick video. And as you can see by the title, the video is going to be on having a strong grip and mitigating recoil. So do me a favor, if you haven't already, make sure that you subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you get notified every time I put out content. All right, so just as a disclaimer at the beginning of this video, I am not a certified firearms instructor. So this video is just about how I, Grayman47, actually, what grip I actually use whenever I'm shooting a pistol. And I figured I'd share it with you guys. And so all you guys that are new shooters, and even some of you guys that have been shooting for a long time might find some helpful hints here. So I'm going to talk about these basic fundamental things that you do to actually mitigate recoil. So again, I'm not a licensed firearms instructor. However, if you like whatever I have, what I'm sharing with you, feel free to use it and then continue to do your own research for yourself. I always suggest that people kind of find what fits them and do what, find what research is out there. All right, so the gun that I chose to use for today's video on mitigating recoil is a full-size pistol. It's the Glock 17 Gen 5, and the reason I chose this pistol is because for the purpose of instruction, it would be a lot easier for you to actually see the grip on a full-size pistol as opposed to like a subcompact or micro pistol. So first things first, this gun is safe. So as you can see, there is nothing in the magazine and nothing in the chamber. So it is clear and it is safe. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that you have your trigger hand or your dominant hand on the grip of the pistol, and making sure that the web between your index finger and your thumb is on the back strap as high as possible. I know sometimes we see it in the movies where there's a big gap between the hand of the shooter and the gun itself. That's absolutely wrong. You don't want to do that because your recoil is just going to be enhanced as the pistol rocks back and forth when you shoot it. So to mitigate that, you want to get your hand up on the back of that back strap as high as possible. And then you also want to have your 3 fingers on that hand wrapped around the front of your grip or frame. And you can see that there is now an opening right in here. That opening is a perfect space for your non-dominant hand. You're going to take the palm of your non-dominant hand and place it right in that opening and wrap those other 4 fingers around the front of your other hand. And this thumb of your non-dominant hand should point right down the frame. And we're going to talk about how we use this finger a little bit in control and recoil as well here in a minute. But it should be pointing right down the frame, and then your dominant thumb should be pointing down the frame as well over top. So your grip should look something like this. All right. So before I go any further, just keep in mind there are a lot of other different techniques out there and variations to this technique itself. So you got to kind of play with what works for you. And then once you figure out what works for you, go ahead and go with that particular style. All right. So again, I'm going to use my dominant hand to wrap around and take my non-dominant hand and fit it right in there like a puzzle. All right. And as you can see, if I can get it here, the sights should be lined up. Your front post should be right in between your back post, and it should be about the same height. Shouldn't be like this or like this. It should be right about the same height where you can see all 3 dots. And those dots should be placed right on your target, and that would be proper presentation and alignment. Also, I talked about this non-dominant hand's thumb. So once you have your wrap around the gun and you're high up on that back strap, this thumb should also be working just a little bit so that it's pressing to the left, to the right for a right-handed shooter, giving just a little bit of pressure to the right on the pistol, because typically when right-handed shooters shoot and they pull the trigger, there's a slight pull to the left. To help mitigate that, you want to put just a little bit of pressure to keep, it's kind of more of a brace than pressure, but you want to keep it so that that gun, when you do pull that trigger, it doesn't move and it stays on target. So this thumb does have a role to play. not just resting on the side of the frame, but also putting a little bit of pressure in the opposite direction of your other hand, just so that it can keep it on target, help keep it on target. All right. Another important part of this is making sure you are applying pressure to your gun with your hands. So your dominant shooting hand, these 3 fingers, I always push, my pressure is these 3 fingers are pushing back up against this palm of my hand. So I'm kind of squeezing this way, not a complete wraparound squeeze, but more I'm squeezing from front to back and from back to front. So it looks kind of like that. All right. And you don't have to put a complete death grip on the pistol. However, you do need to squeeze and make sure that your pressure is applied pretty firmly. So I am squeezing it pretty hard. I'm not squeezing it to the point where I'm shaking, but I am squeezing it pretty hard. All right. And then with this hand, my dominant hand, once it is applied, I'm also squeezing it just a little harder than I am with my dominant hand. And the reason for that is if you're squeezing too hard with your dominant hand, then you end up manipulating the trigger in a bad way. So you don't want to do that. So you want to leave it loose enough that you can still pull the trigger properly without your pressure interfering with that. So the majority of your pressure is going to come from your non-dominant hand. All right. Also, what you want to do is make sure that this wrist is locked. If the wrist is not locked, it's also going to allow for more recoil. So for example, right now my wrist is not locked. You can see if I just hit, not even that hard, if I just hit the bottom of the gun, it does move. But if I lock that wrist and squeeze, you're going to get a lot less, and I'm hitting it even harder. So you do want to lock that wrist out as well. All right, y'all, so another thing that you might want to take into consideration when trying to mitigate recoil is your elbows as well. There are a couple different schools of thought out there. Some people recommend that the elbows are slightly bent as you shoot, and it kind of absorbs and helps act kind of like a shock and absorb the recoil. And then other folks will tell you that locking out all the way out and elbows completely locked is the best way to mitigate recoil. You kind of have to play around with it, see what works for you. I'm going to say for me, I typically lock all the way out in most cases. There are some times where I do bring it in just a little bit more and put a slight bend in my elbow. But typically, I'm locked all the way out. So again, that's something that's personal preference. You got to see what works for you. One of the things that I often say is you have to make sure that not only do you have the right grip, the right technique that works for you, you have to get to the range and train. So if you just, if you tinker around and you find the proper grip that works for you best and the right technique, if you're not training at the range and you're not putting rounds down range, you're not going to be a great shooter. You're not going to hit the target that you want to hit. The other thing is I often tell folks too to train most of their time with their everyday carry pistol. If you have an everyday carry pistol or two, those are the firearms that you need to be training with. I recommend 80 to 90% of the time. Simply because if you end up in a situation where you have to deploy that weapon, and hopefully you never do have to use that weapon, then you'll be most accurate with that weapon and you'll hit the target that is intended. So make sure, again, you're practicing with that EDC as opposed to just various guns at the range on a regular basis. An example is this gun here is not an EDC of mine. and I don't shoot it very often at the range. So it does take me some time to get comfortable with it again every time I bring it back out. So there's a big difference in how I shoot this and how I shoot my everyday carry pistols. All right, so that's it, folks. That's it for the grip and mitigating recoil video. I appreciate you guys riding with me on another one. And do me a favor, if you already have it, please subscribe and also share and like this video. Hit that notification bell so you get notified when I put out new content. I always appreciate you guys in the comments that you leave in the comment section. So please drop some lines down there, and I'll see you in that section. And like I always say, if you ain't packing, you're slacking. I'll see you when I see you.